comment, subscribe, share if you have the finances to do that for yourself. In this moment today, April 30th, 2026, we are talking about Schedule 3. Why are they redetermining marijuana again? Before I get into talking about marijuana being a Schedule 3 drug, I want to start in the past. Let's take it back. This occurs before I was born. I was born in 1986.
You born 86?
Marijuana was legal on the West Coast, and they had a law on the East Coast, only in the United States, meaning this perimeterized area, this area that's regulated, basically. Marijuana was open and freely, not freely, but it was open and accepted on the West Coast. In New York, it was not open and accepted yet. They had laws that were in place to protect marijuana. From the West Coast to the East Coast. That's why the West Coast and the East Coast collaborated. It was a way to transport. It was a way to integrate. It was a way for the segregated and broken to attach. It means you gotta go the distance, or somebody somebody has to work the position. What I mean by that is, on the West Coast, they were outsourcing the area to produce and provide more medical marijuana. Without having to penalize Mexico or other places outside of this country that produces medical marijuana naturally, meaning outside with sunlight and natural seasons in that location where they are growing marijuana. Now, by the time I was born in 1986, that was the competition, that was the competitiveness, that was the political arrangements, that was the political war. Now, let's fast forward to now. They have changed the laws 2 times, more than 2 times, but I'm only stating 2 because I'm being prominent. They made marijuana legal in most of the 50 states. So I'm gonna say all 50 states, but then you got certain states, maybe about 4 to 6 states, something like that. It's a low number that is not legal. Now they have made marijuana legal because everything that was in between California and the East Coast, like New Jersey, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, them places near the water, New Hampshire, everything in between there from the east to the west has now linked and connected because these places and states have so many marijuana dispensaries. Now follow me because I'm about to speed up talking. Meaning that marijuana has already been being imported into the United States from the outside perimeters. They haven't changed that, or they remanaged that. So they made marijuana legal in all 50 states, which attached to the previous assessments for laws, and that caused the flow to be more silent and possible. And we lived that for since 2000, 2010, 11 or something like that. 2000, yeah. Since we had 2008 or 10 or something like that. 2011, 12 is when medical marijuana hit in all 50 states. So, you know. Now, let's fast forward some more. You got dispensaries in all these states holding marijuana. That is the stock market. I'm calling that placement. Now, these buildings that are spread out in all these states, which means there are many cities with more than one dispensary in it. So that's times 3 times how many ever cities that are in one state. And then you gotta times that by 50. So that's gonna be a bigger number than we come up with anyway. Now they're transporting and commuting medical marijuana into these places very discreetly, and we rarely see when drop-offs are. But my point is that they have moved in more solidified into the United States with the drug that they're using to exploit the past and as well recycle this drug. And what I want to call stretching it, like the THC, breaking it down to the CBD, breaking it down to the hash or wax or the leaves. You know, they're breaking it all down. They're using every bit of it. You know, making hemp blunts and stuff. Now that everything is legal in the states, it changes things outside of the country. Therefore, they're getting to their answer of why they want it to be legal and they need us to vote for it or find out if we want to vote for it to make these changes. Now that we voted for it and everything's in place, and they have recycled and extracted everything that they want off of the drug, which is marijuana, now they have come to a new conclusion that reverts back to saying that the drug is harmless. But they also know and knew that if they can't sell this drug at a lucrative price and control it like they had been before, having a new vote on it for a new rule of the drug, they put a new drug out in its place. In my opinion, it's fentanyl, which fentanyl already was around, it just wasn't in the places that they are in now. That expanded into a lot of other aspects that I don't want to put into this video. Medical marijuana has made its stake and claim in the United States, from the West Coast to the East Coast, all through the Midwest of the United States. So everything in between California and the East Coast are now just a flat land that's regulated and monetized, basically, with real estate properties that are holding medical marijuana. So there are scheduled deliveries and a balance of how much they will allow to be sold. There's a cap and a quota that they match and meet. Now they're on the next level. And I'm going to speed it up, I'm going to skip some things, but now they want to reschedule it. Because there was a control, they scheduled it from what it was before to a controlled substance. And now they're changing it from a controlled substance to a Schedule 3 drug. What that means, I'm not going to say we're going to wait to see what this voting aspect tells us. A Schedule 3 drug literally is for specifically marijuana. There's orders to this. Certain drugs don't get into the country without another drug being allowed. Meaning it changes families, it changes financial power. That's why we have to vote. Politics change partners. Now, president that we have now is giving us facts that were already retrieved, calculated, and decided upon. Everything outside of the United States is already in effect for it in different countries and different places. We are the country that have to be the vessel to make the connections. That's why we have to vote. Here comes the abuse. This is my opinion. You can't even sell cocaine or get cocaine over here without marijuana selling. Marijuana and cocaine is not the same product. cocaine is only considered a drug because of the euphoric or the effect it gives when you consume it. That's what they call it. But the products that they make it out of, think about that. Why would they call marijuana a controlled substance when they call cocaine a controlled substance?
You know Bruce Wayne mentioned his song?
So medical marijuana is not basically a controlled substance. They're calling it that because of the properties that have been purchased for the containment of marijuana to be confined in, meaning that it's monitored, it's regulated, and it's limited in that specific location. So therefore, when you do go and purchase these items in that location, you're being recorded, monitored, observed. It's on repeat. That's why it's a controlled substance now, because they're telling us indirectly that we see or we know what's moving, what's being consumed, or how much, right? The other part, to my opinion, is now that it's medical marijuana all across the United States, basically, it's called a controlled substance, and it's not in competition. It's just on the scale value like another drug because of how basic it could be, but it's not really basic. They're just confining it. They're monitoring it to find out how they can advance from the point that they allow. So you sell marijuana, then you can bring cocaine over and sell that, which makes so much more money, and then you can have buying power to import more things, whether it's drugs, legal products, clothing materials, food. It just produces more money to have buying power. That's cocaine. Now, medical marijuana comes in and it's balancing out the war of it. And now they want to reschedule it because they have figured out that they have an advantage from allowing us to vote for this. So let's say all of the weed is coming from down in the hot area. Let's say Mexico. And I want to say another country, but I'm thinking too fast. So all this stuff comes from Mexico. They don't have to literally smuggle it in. It has become a part of a funneling system where they balance and share the profits. So medical marijuana is already here in the States. They know how much they sent and shipped over here. So they're going to have it basically on pre-order. It's going to be the same method, smuggling, except for they going to know what this got smuggled in for, the cap, the quota, and they set it aside. That's the difference. Because if not, there will be high consumer bills for a lot of people in these states, north and south of the equator. So with that being said, they're changing it to Schedule 3 drug because they see how much power financially it was beneficial. They regret some of the people that they released from prison. They don't regret it totally. They just see that if they make the decisions that they could be able to make after rescheduling this drug, they will see the benefits of the financial difference from marijuana, cocaine, heroin, morphine, Vicodin pills. They will see the difference and they can manage it from there. So why would they change it from a controlled substance to Schedule 3? Real estate. Because these buildings should be condemned because they're drug houses, right? But legally we call them dispensaries. So that means the war from the West Coast to the East Coast has literally actually got worse. Only because people see from the outside looking in. All of these buildings holding medical marijuana, how long are they going to stay that way? Because here, I can tell you from my opinion, a lot of them closed down. Only prominent ones are open. That's where I'm getting to with saying that this is real estate. Those buildings are condemned. Those are the banks of that location. And they're not literally holding money, but those are the banks of the location now. But they're not banks. The bank owns the property, right? So the bank is reinforced with this being a dispensary. They bought more time.